Yes, sir, baby. We're back at it again. Champs Day 2. And dude, there is a lot to talk about today. I mean, we had 4 matches today, but it created enough drama for the whole weekend. Obviously headlined by Optic, but there is some wild matches to go over and we have a lot to talk about. So again, we're doing a breakdown after every single day of COD Champs and we're going straight through it, one shot, no edits, and hanging out together. So without further ado, let's talk some Call of Duty Champs and go through all the action of today. So without further ado, I mean, Dallas started off the day here. Dallas versus Toronto, a winner semis matchup, and this lived up to the hype. Two teams that we were all really excited to watch heading into the day, obviously after Dallas's insane performances yesterday. And I mean, this series was a ton of fun. So I mean, off the rip, let's just talk about Dallas a little bit. Of course, they won. They ended up winning 3-2 in this series. They beat the Ultra, punch your ticket to the grand finals tomorrow. But Shotzzy in map 1 was absolutely absurd. He was frying. I mean, scary on that last P4, finding the clutches, finding the two-piece, like I think I was on Kleenex in that final kill inside P4 on basketball. And overall, you just had to be insanely impressed with the breaks on P4 from Dallas. And iLLeY and really the whole team made some impressive plays throughout this series and even on that first hard point. And then what's interesting is that they end up dropping the map to S&D on Express, where, I mean, my goodness, Ultra, I'm gonna talk about them in a second, obviously, but they played an incredible map. And then you go on to the Checkmate 3-1, where Ultra look really, really good in control. But then Dallas come out and again, inside of another hard point on Moscow, they absolutely dominate. Crim was playing like it was Black Ops 2 or Ghosts, or again, this dude was frying. He ended up going, what, 29 and 13 in the hard point, which was absurd. And like, what you got to really take away is these rotations from Dallas are insanely clean on Moscow. I mean, we've now seen them play some really good Moscow maps, and you know, yesterday they beat Rocker 250 to 147 on Moscow. Then they come out here today and beat Ultra 250 to 183, or I'm sorry, 250 to 118 on Moscow. And when you have Crim playing like that, it feels like they just have a really good grasp of the spawns. And we saw how well they played the P1, P2s, and then translating that into the P3s, P4s. They were just really impressive with how they played both sides of the map. And that gets a little bit scary because then you go to a game 5. And I mean, we saw at the end how hyped iLLeY was. I mean, it went to round 11, obviously, and so it was as intense as it gets. And there were some big time plays made in that game. I mean, Vivid made some clutch plays. And overall, I think the patience and the team play from Dallas, we saw a few times where they kind of clustered together. They found those first bloods. And that was one theme between both Toronto and Dallas, was how well both these teams played their first blood chances, or capitalized on their first bloods and converted their first blood opportunities. And that's just a sign of mature, good team search and destroy, is that when you have that man advantage, you're winning those rounds and winning and trading those kills off your 4v3s. And that was just good S&D from both teams in both of these matches. And Dallas ended up clutching up in the round 11. We saw Insight make an insane play to even get it to a round 11. And then iLLeY stands up, he gets hyped. And overall, this Dallas team is really scary. Obviously, we'll be talking a lot more about them, I'd imagine, tomorrow, and maybe even on Sunday as well. But this team has it all heading into this winners finals match against FaZe. And they have a legit chance to win. And even if they end up losing, they have a legit chance to rematch again inside the grand finals for sure. So let's talk about Toronto then. In the same series, I mean, they end up losing to Dallas 2-3. Then they send down the losers bracket and play Optic. So I mean, we saw some insane plays from Bance in that first series against Dallas. You had to be really impressed on that Checkmate. Bance was frying. He went 32 and 16. That might be the best map that Bance has had all year long. He literally was dominating, finding streaks. I mean, not to mention Cammy and Insight had some really great games too, but you had to have been really, that was really the standout thing there, was seeing Bance's upside as a Slayer in that map. Earlier on in the series, I think in the S&D, we really saw some really good things on that Moscow, or I mean, sorry, on the Express from from Toronto, and we saw a really clutch Cammy early on. That beamer from Cammy on tracks to Crim on the stairway or on the walkway was absolutely absurd. And then we saw the absolute finesse from Kleenex on Express as well. And just overall walk away from that really impressed with Toronto on Express and feel really good about this team in Search and Destroy heading into the rest of this event. And, you know, with the teams that are left now, I mean, it could go either way, but you got to feel pretty good about Ultra. If they ended up rematching against Dallas, you cannot bet against this team to win in a rematch situation against a team like the Empire. So overall, you've got to love this squad and how they play Call of Duty. And there's a reason why, you know, you go down to play Optic, and why I felt really, really confident that Toronto was going to beat Optic. Obviously, we'll talk about Optic here in just a second as well. But not only that Toronto's been playing some really good S&D and Optic has not, but you know, we saw Toronto play some solid hard points as well. And when you head into an Optic series and you play on Checkmate map 1, that's the map that Optic has to win. They have to win that map because it's the map where Optic's been looking pretty good on. Ultra are coming off 2 hardpoint losses to Dallas, and not only that, but Optic's not going to be confident in their S&Ds in that series, so you have to win that map 1 to give yourself a chance to win in basically in the second hardpoint, or maybe hopefully something mixy happens, you end up winning on the game 5, which wasn't Express, which if anything, maybe you like Optic's chances on a little bit mixier Express making B hits and things like that. But overall, Toronto played an insanely impressive series on that Checkmate. I mean, it was just overall a backbreaker, and they played the rotations really, really well in that second half, even fending off the dashy streaks early. And then you go to the Moscow, and you know that they want to rotate these bombs, and this is where we can start talking about Optic as well. I mean, Optic was 1-6 against Toronto on Moscow, or in S&D on the year, but they were 1-2 against Toronto on Moscow. Their only win came on Moscow, and so it was probably best case scenario for Optic to even have a chance to win it. But like the fundamentals from Optic were just awful, and they were rotating bombs. Toronto was rotating bomb sites, and Optic wasn't even watching the crosses. They weren't getting that information. And Cammy was the playmaker, and Cammy was taking them to the woodshed in this S&D. And it seems like Cammy really turns up against Optic. It feels like this dude just fries Optic every single time, even more than any other team in a CDL when they play. And he was highlighted in that Moscow S&D for sure. Then you head on to the raid Control. I mean, let's be honest. This is a map that Toronto should never lose. They had 3 streaks to work with, and they end up wasting them, basically just completely blowing the streaks. They even get a team kill, their own team kill on with one of the streaks. They had Insight streaks and Bance's artillery to work with. And so to lose a map like that when you have those streaks in play is really, really tough. And they had every reason to win this series 3-0. But they head on to a hardpoint raid, and you had to be pretty dang confident in Toronto to win a map like that with how good they looked on that map in the past. And it was mixy. I mean, they had a lot of reasons to lose this map, but they got outslayed by 13 kills, and they still won. And so with you have a team like the Ultra who, you know, they kind of blew the raid Control, you could kind of tilt on that. You're playing against a team like Optic with the crowd against you. You know everybody's rooting against you. You could easily tilt in a situation like that, but they didn't. They fought through, and they come back and have composure even when they're not playing very well on a hard point on raid, and they still win it. So it goes to show the world-class Call of Duty and composure that Toronto has with a squad of 4. I mean, all of these guys made different plays at different times. Insight made some insane plays. I mean, like I said, in that Dallas series, Insight's 2-piece in round 10 to force the round 11 was wild. He got the wall bang. I think it was on Illy, who was sitting top mansion. He killed Shotzi inside of Tiki to even give him a chance to go to the round 11. So overall, Toronto's really close, and they can compete with anybody in the CDL. That is for sure. So let's talk about Optic. All right, this is something else, man. So Optic, going into this series against Toronto, they had lost to Toronto, 4 straight times. They hadn't beat them since stage 1. And so the odds of Optic beating them going in were not high. I had Toronto winning this 3-2 on stream. I was talking about in the watch party, but the question marks came from Optic Search and Destroy. I mean, from yesterday, I had no confidence in Optic and S&D heading into this series. And honestly, they looked probably even better on the Moscow than I thought they might. Like, again, and they just made some fundamental mistakes where you're not watching that cross. Like, Dashy's not watching the cross to give them the information on the rotations. And then there was just a few different times where Envoy got picked pushing certain things. Like one time he got picked when he was the island player, which was more of like a really good play of isolating him by Toronto than it was a bad play from Envoy. But still, Envoy gets picked as that island player, get maybe lingering a little bit too long on that jump up spot on A stairs. Then there was one round, it was in the middle somewhere, I don't have the round marked here, but he got picked running into L, and Scump wasn't able to get his trade, so they were both hitting the flank together on defense. So Scump and Envoy were hitting the flank on A side, hitting L on P3 towards the flank, and Envoy gets picked. He's running a little bit ahead of Scump, and it's just an unfortunate timing where Cammy makes I think it was Cammy made a really, really good play there. But again, he pushes an angle where Scump's not close enough to him. It ends up not being able to get traded. Cammy pops a 3-piece, and then it's basically chalked to that point. And another thing is where like Optic, they even when they get these first bloods, they're not even capitalizing. I mean, a stat from R11 Stats on Twitter, where he does a lot of really good analytics. But so far at Champs in these S&Ds, Optic had a 53% first blood conversion rate. So when they got a first blood, they only won 53% of those rounds, which was 7th out of 8 teams there. LAT was the only team worse, but again, they only played one series. And to like Toronto, Dallas, and FaZe, at least at that point heading into that series, they were 100% conversion rate on first bloods. So when you have that 4v3, you don't lose the round. And Optic, they just choke away these 4v3s at times, or these man advantages, because they don't play together and they just don't group up. They have their setups that are way too spread thin. They don't play for the information well to rotate bomb sites, and that really hurts them. And so there's a lot of things wrong there. And then you head into like, you know, the raid control was really solid, but again, it was more like Toronto Toronto had every reason to win that thing in the control, even though Dashy and Formal did die 1 kill off streaks each. And so like that could have been a situation where you could flip the game on its head a little bit if either of them end up getting streaks. But that was about as intensive of a control as you can get. And then you head into the raid hard point, and then some of the rotations on like the P2, P3 were just really tough. They just weren't good. And they go down big early, like what, nearly 100 points. But Scump ends up turning on again in that second half. He's playing for streaks on P3. And I literally said in the stream, like before that hill, I'm like, man, I think you're going to need streaks here. If you don't get streaks here, you're not going to be able to break P4. You're losing this game. And then immediately Scump gets on a 5 spree, and I'm like, oh my word, here we go. Like, it's like Scump knew it too. He had to play for streaks, and then voila, streaks. So he gets streaks. He ends up going on a 10 spree. And the thing that I really wanted to highlight was that they used Scump's artillery there on that P4 to break, but they used the artillery in a situation where they weren't able to block the back spawns on P4. So like if you have somebody in kitchen there who, once you get those kills, you can look towards back jungle and block those close spawns, then suddenly they're spawning out back ramp or on mansion, probably ramp because of their positioning, and you can easily break that hill. But instead, they get 2 kills, and 2 of Toronto's members spawn up right next to the hill back behind jungle. And that is basically what saves them on that P4, and then they have to then use the cruise missile to break the rest of P4. And so that doesn't allow them to use the cruise missile on P1 or on P5, and then they end up losing the game on P5. And so that ended up really deciding the game. And again, that's just those small things where the best teams in the CDL might coordinate that. Like, yo, we need to block these spawns. We need to block the back spawns here. And they weren't able to do it in time. And that was probably the difference in that match. So overall, it's just those small things. It's always the small things with Optic, but those are the things that end up causing them to lose. And so we got to talk about the big picture now. I mean, obviously, like what the video is titled, like, what's this future for Optic looking like? And I mean, at the end of the day, S&D is what let them down. They lost all 3 of their S&Ds at Champs, and they weren't pretty either. And so when you're really considering their future, you know, what does that look like for them? And my first thought is something that I've been talking about all year long, is that for a team as popular as Optic and for a team that has, I mean, enough funding to do this, the fact that most of the, basically all the best teams in the CDL, you know, FaZe, Toronto, New York, Rocker, they all have analysts, they have assistant coaches, and they have S&D analysts. And the fact that Optic only has Sender as a head coach, but they don't have an S&D analyst, they don't have an assistant coach, they don't have just a normal analyst, like, these are missed opportunities and more eyes and feedback for a team, and to help critique these small things in the game could literally be the difference. And I just think that those things alone could have helped them in the long term on the season by continually improving those small things that were going wrong for them. And it would help create a better baseline of consistency for them in Search and Destroys as well, because those assistant coaches could help create those strats and create the fundamentals that they need, and critique those small things as well. So I don't know. I just think they should have a bigger coaching staff. That should be step one for them in the offseason, to really acquire more coaching staff to help create a better competitive team around their players to help them in the long term on the season. I think that could let alone develop them in a big time way on the year. My question mark is maybe that's something that Formal and Scump don't value. And if that's something that they don't value, then that's going to be tough to convince them that that's what they need, or tough to convince them that it's a worthwhile feedback, or that these guys might know enough to help them, or, you know, I could see there being some sort of ego thing there. I mean, maybe like subtly, where you're like, I mean, come on, man, I'm a COD champion. I've been playing forever and ever. Like, I don't need these guys telling me stats or anything, you know, like I got this. So I understand that potential, if that is a thing, that potential thought process, but that's just kind of my few cents there, where I feel like that could be a thing as well. For me, with roster changes, it seems unlikely that there'd be roster changes without somebody retiring, whether that's Scump or Formal. But Scump is still playing some insanely great Call of Duty. He's right there with the best in the CDL right now, and Champ Scump was really freaking great. And so next year, let's hope we have a whole year on LAN at least. And if that's the case, like, I don't know why Scump still wants to compete and try to win a COD championship or some more make some massive moves this next season. I don't see why Scump couldn't try to do that. Basically, it just seems unlikely that any of them end up leaving. I don't really know what you'd try to do unless Formal feels like he could maximize his skills better on another team. You know, obviously the other thing is that, like, Optic, you know, the roles worked out for him well this year, where you had 2 ARs the whole season, where Dash you'd rather not flex if he doesn't have to. So that worked out well for him this year. So I don't know with this roster. I think they have the upside to win. I would start with the coaching and see where that takes you in the next year. But that's where I'd be at with Rocker, or with Optic. So let's talk Rocker. Obviously, highlighting Standy's a freak, and that's really all that comes down to. They played NYSL after NYSL, of course, lost to FaZe. We'll talk about it in a second here. And they looked good. What is interesting though is that this series basically played a little bit inverse than what we thought after Rip here. I mean, we thought that New York would win the hard points. We thought that Rocker would win the S&Ds. I mean, Empire or Subliners, you'd imagine, wouldn't be that good in S&D on the year. Optic, yeah, they did beat Optic in the S&Ds, but, you know, against FaZe, even on a map where FaZe doesn't play much, basically outclassed them. And I thought, you know, Rocker would be in a pretty good spot after how good Rocker played in the S&Ds against LA Thieves to beat Subliners, but really it came out and flipped around. Rocker came out fried on Garrison. Standy is a mad lad. I mean, the run began, Standy went 27-15 with 5k damage. He was frying. And one thing that I thought was interesting is that, you know, the last time they played Garrison, of course, against Toronto, but they played a great Garrison there. And the last time I saw them play that good of a Garrison was against Florida in the last group stage of stage 5 before their run began. So watch out for Rocker in the rest of this tournament. But overall, I thought the Raid S&D, I was surprised they lost it, considering they've been so good on Raid S&D. But the Garrison hardpoint was just so impressive from Standy. Then you head over to the Control, and Major Maniac, man, this dude was on fire. He was frying. And you gotta love seeing Mike dominate in the respawns like he was in this series. And the ARs were having their way with, I mean, Major Maniac was having his way with New York in this series, making elite plays here on defense. I mean, Standy found streaks. He was on a big kill streak there in the control. And that was just a really impressive control performance. They ended up winning that one 3-2 with the defensive round wins on Garrison. So overall, I mean, then you go on to the checkmate hard point, and again, it went down to the wire. They had to restart it off the rip there, so I was wondering if they might lose composure, but Rokkr bounced back, and even though they were up by 70 or whatever before the restart happened, they restarted it, and then they were right back up by 70 off the rip. So impressive start from the Rokkr there. And again, Major Maniac playing great, and you love seeing those long lines of sight and converting with the AR in hand, playing off of his SMGs really, really well. That's the upside that Rokkr need to make this run and finish top 2 at this champs, is having Major Maniac play like that. And so that was just an insanely impressive performance. And I think Rokkr have a chance here, man, in a rematch in the Battle of the North, playing Toronto, rematching from the grand finals in stage 4 or in stage 5. Rokkr can win this tomorrow. I would still favor Ultra, but it's going to be a coin flip, like a 55-45 situation for those teams. So last matches of their last teams of the day, FaZe and New York. I mean, we're going to talk a lot more about FaZe tomorrow, so I'll leave it pretty short. Simpson saying aBeZy's really good at search and destroy, and Arcitys is still really, really freaking good at Call of Duty. I mean, it felt like people, continue to kind of blow by Arcitys and disrespect. I always hate using the word disrespect, but definitely not giving him enough credit for how good he can be. And he played great in that series. He was looking awesome and really got the best of New York in that series. I mean, the confidence was impressive, and Clay just seemed a little bit over aggressive at times in that series. I feel like he put himself in some tough situations, and overall, just a tough situation overall for New York. I mean, FaZe, again, we'll talk more about them tomorrow too. They're insane, and they're still my favorite to win this tournament. Let's talk New York. I mean, in that FaZe series, their best chance was on that Miami, but even then, they just felt a little bit discombobulated, not playing together, not treating the kills as effectively as you think they should be. And it felt like they were pretty much just completely outmatched, which again would make sense for a team who's new like this, with FaZe, of course, having all this time lately in New York, coming back with Clay now back in the lineup after like 2 weeks. But like I said, Clay seemed to put himself in a few tough spots here in the series, especially in the S&D, where I was a little bit surprised that he pushed some of these things and gave up his life once in a while. And that was a little bit surprising to see. The one moment on Garrison that I wanted to highlight was, I think it was in the final round, they pushed through Square, and they were playing together, but they weren't playing as a team. And this, I think, was a really interesting case study for the difference between playing together and playing as a team. And they basically all took individual gunfights. They were all there in Square, but one child towards Arch, one child towards Bricks, and they didn't actually have a chance to trade kills. And the trades didn't come through. They all died, and basically they lost the map. And Clay was kind of pissed after that. He was kind of chewing him out a little bit, like, yo, what did we just do there? And Clay was even kind of victim to that too. But I thought that was just a sign, like, okay, this team's definitely not fully together yet, and it makes their win against Optic even more unlikely, considering the subliners beat them in a hard point and 2 S&Ds. But it probably goes to show why Optic ended up losing today. But basically, then you head into the match 3 against Minnesota, and it was a lot of the same things. I mean, they end up winning the Search and Destroy on Raid, which is a really solid, impressive win against Rokkr, a really quality S&D win. But they got obliterated in the Garrison. They got obliterated in well, not obliterated. They got beat pretty well in the Garrison control. I mean, Rokkr went off again there, and that really took over in that series. And they just seemed to lack a little bit of that upside slaying. Asim had a pretty tough series. I'd imagine he's going to be really frustrated with how this went. Definitely not a good series for him today. I mean, that was there were some moments where I was like, man, Asim just threw away his life. I think it was on the checkmate hardpoint where near the end of the game, like Asim flew into offices when they just needed to contest P1, because they would have sent it to a P2, I think, where they had spawns. And that was a big time problem too. So as for New York, I'll be interested to see how this plays out for them this year. I would lean that this team doesn't stay together, that Hydra stays on this team for sure, I would imagine. But then the question mark would be, what does Clay have in mind? Where's Asim at? What do they think of Mac? And how is Asim and Clay's relationship at this point? So there's a lot of these small question marks where I'll be very, very interested to see how it plays out. My bet would be that Hydra and Clay stay on this roster if Clay doesn't decide to retire, which I think is a real possibility. So those are all for debate, and we're going to talk a lot more about that on the podcast this week. We'll talk a lot more about on the podcast this week about Optic as well, and the decisions that they're going to have coming down the barrel here too. So I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown video. If you guys did, I mean, this was a lengthy one, but I had a lot to say today. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, drop a comment down below. All your hot takes, your opinions, where I was right, where I was wrong, and your thoughts on the tournament so far and what you guys thinking for the rest of this weekend. I'll be very interested to see, and I want to hear your thoughts on Optic's situation and what this could look like for them heading into next year as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you guys really enjoyed it. But as always, guys, I'm your boy Salvation Elite. And guys, we will see you next time. I'm out.